Alien princess accidentally marries her human roommate. Their honeymoon becomes a galactic odyssey. The night was quiet, broken only by the sound of a flickering neon sign outside the small apartment window. Inside, the human student named Daniel was trying to focus on his books. He had never expected his life to be anything beyond simple struggles of college, bills, and late-night meals. Yet across the small table sat his roommate, a girl who seemed too strange, too perfect, and far too mysterious to belong in this ordinary world. She called herself Solara. Her silver hair reflected the dim light of the lamp, and her eyes carried a glow that unsettled him. Daniel had always assumed she was just eccentric, maybe from some faraway culture. He never guessed she was royalty from another world. That evening, she placed a steaming bowl of food in front of him. The meal smelled strange but delicious, and Daniel laughed at her attempt to cook something Earth-like. Solara, however, looked serious. Her expression held a weight that Daniel did not understand. He thought it was just another one of her odd moods. She asked him to repeat after her as she spoke a few words in her language. Daniel, curious and playful, agreed without hesitation. He mimicked the sound, stumbling over the alien syllables but managing to echo them closely. When he finished, Solara stared at him as if frozen. Her hands trembled slightly, and for a moment her glowing eyes widened in disbelief. Daniel chuckled, thinking he had mispronounced something, but she did not laugh. Instead, she leaned closer and whispered, "You do not understand what you have just said." Daniel frowned. "I was just repeating after you. What is the big deal?" Her voice carried a cold certainty. "Those words are sacred. They are vows. You have just bound yourself to me. By the ancient right of my people, we are now joined as husband and wife." Daniel almost choked on his drink. He thought she was joking, but her eyes did not shift, and her trembling hand reached across the table to touch his. The silence in the room grew heavier. Outside, the city's noise seemed distant and meaningless. Daniel tried to laugh it off, but Solara's voice grew sharper. "This cannot be undone. You spoke the vow before witness and offering. The union is sealed." Confusion clouded Daniel's mind. He glanced at the table and noticed for the first time the strange objects she had set there earlier. A silver cup filled with blue liquid, a crystal shard glowing faintly, and a pattern drawn with powder across the table's surface. He had thought it was some art project. Now he realized it was a ritual. His heart pounded and his mouth went dry. "You mean to tell me I just married you?" Solara lowered her gaze. "Yes, and not only me. I am heir to my people. You are now tied to a destiny you cannot escape." Daniel pushed back his chair, his mind spinning. The idea was absurd, yet her trembling voice and solemn expression made it impossible to laugh. He had known she was unusual, but he never suspected her secrets ran this deep. He felt trapped in a moment that was both unreal and terrifying. His ordinary life had just been shattered by a few careless words. Before Daniel could respond, the room shook. A low hum filled the air, followed by the rattling of glass. Solara rose quickly, her face pale. She muttered something in her language, and Daniel saw fear flicker in her glowing eyes. Through the window, a light descended, cutting across the night sky. It was not a plane. It was not anything human. A beam of light shone into the room, and shadows stretched across the walls. Solara grabbed Daniel's arm tightly. "They have come. They must have sensed the vow." Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "Who has come?" The floor vibrated as something landed nearby. The neon sign outside buzzed and died. Darkness crept in, broken only by the eerie glow from Solara's eyes. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as a tall figure appeared in the doorway, cloaked in shimmering light. It spoke in the same strange tongue Solara had used, its voice deep and resonant. Solara answered, her words sharp, almost offensive. Daniel felt lost. He could not understand their exchange, but he felt the weight of every syllable. Finally, Solara turned to him, her expression grave. "This is the envoy. He has come to confirm our bond. You are no longer just Daniel. You are my consort. You are tied to the throne of my people." Daniel's stomach twisted. He had only wanted a quiet evening, but now his life was spiraling beyond his control. The envoy extended a hand toward him, its long fingers glowing faintly. Daniel hesitated, but Solara's grip tightened around his wrist. Her voice was a whisper. "If you refuse him, it will mean war." The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. Daniel's thoughts raced, but the envoy's presence pressed down on him, demanding an answer. His voice shook as he muttered, This is insane. Yet the envoy's hand remained outstretched, waiting. Solara's eyes searched his, filled with desperation and fear. Say yes, Daniel. If not for me, then for yourself. Everything depends on it. The weight of her words struck him. Outside, the city remained silent, unaware of the storm unfolding in his tiny apartment. Daniel realized that his life had changed forever the moment he repeated those strange words. And now, as the envoy loomed closer, he understood that this was only the beginning of something far greater, and far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Daniel's world had always been ordinary, bound by the dull routines of school, part-time work, and restless nights of study. But now the ground beneath his life had cracked open and he was falling into something he could not stop. The envoy that stood in the apartment filled the room with a pressure that made every breath heavy. Its form shimmered, taller than any human, cloaked in flowing light. Daniel had no words for it. It was like standing before a being born of stars. Solara stood by his side, her face pale but steady. Her hand never left his arm, as if she feared that without her touch he might collapse or run. She spoke to the envoy in her language, her voice trembling but commanding. The being answered with a low hum that seemed to vibrate in Daniel's chest. He could not understand, but he knew it was judging him. Every second of silence cut into him like a blade. Finally, Solara turned to Daniel. Her voice was steady now, though her eyes betrayed her fear. They accept you, but you must come with me. If you remain here, they will see it as defiance. If you leave with me, you will be seen as my chosen consort. Daniel's mouth went dry. His mind screamed for escape, for denial. He wanted to say no, to call the entire thing madness, but when he looked into her glowing eyes, he saw something that silenced him. He saw desperation, and behind that he saw truth. This was no dream, no illusion. She was an alien princess, and he was now bound to her fate. The envoy gestured, and a beam of light opened in the center of the room. It stretched wide, swirling with colors Daniel had never seen before. It was a doorway, a path leading away from Earth. He shook his head, his heart pounding. I cannot just leave. My life is here. Solara's grip tightened. Her voice was urgent. Your life is already gone. The vow has tied you to me. If you stay, they will destroy everything you know. You must come. Only then can I protect you. Daniel's chest ached as fear consumed him. He looked back at the cluttered desk, the books he had fought to understand, the cheap lamp glowing faintly, the little fragments of a life he had built alone. He had struggled so much to hold on to that fragile life, but now it felt small and distant. The envoy's gaze burned into him, patient but merciless. With a trembling step, Daniel allowed Solara to lead him into the light. The world twisted and the weight of gravity slipped away. For a moment he felt as though his body was being stretched into infinity. Then, with a jarring silence, he found himself standing inside something vast and strange. A ship. The walls glowed with living veins of light, pulsing softly as if the vessel itself breathed. The air was cool, filled with a faint hum. Daniel staggered, struggling to find his balance, while Solara stood tall, as if the place belonged to her. Figures appeared, their forms both human-like and alien. Tall, slender, with sharp eyes that glowed faintly. They bowed their heads to Solara, then turned their gazes to Daniel. He felt their judgment, the way they measured him, the way they doubted his worth. He was an intruder in their world, a mistake bound to their princess by accident. Solara spoke to them quickly, her words sharp and defensive. Though Daniel could not understand, he knew she was protecting him, asserting his place by her side. The figures stepped back, their faces cold but obedient. Solara turned to him, her expression softening. Do not speak unless I tell you. They will see you as weak if you stumble. Trust me. I will guide you. Daniel nodded, though fear gnawed at his stomach. He could not deny the truth any longer. He was not in his world anymore. This was hers, and he was now part of it. The ship began to move. Through a vast window, Daniel saw stars stretching across a black sea. He saw planets drifting in the distance, glowing with faint halos. He pressed his hand against the glass, his heart pounding. Earth was gone, hidden somewhere behind the endless night. He whispered, What have I done? Solara's voice was quiet, almost mournful. You have stepped into destiny. My people will test you, Daniel. They will try to break you, but you must stand with me. If you falter, they will strip you away and I will be forced to watch you die. Her words sank into him, and he realized she was not exaggerating. This was no fantasy. It was survival. She had brought him here not out of choice but out of necessity. And now, if he failed, both of them would pay the price. Hours or perhaps only minutes passed as the ship drifted through the void. Daniel sat silently, his mind racing with fear and confusion. He thought of home, of the streets he might never walk again, of the people who would never know what happened to him. Yet even as he clung to those thoughts, he felt Solara's presence beside him. She sat close, her hand brushing his. For the first time he saw the weight in her eyes, the burden of being a princess bound by duty. She whispered without looking at him, "I did not mean for this to happen. But now that it has, I cannot let you go. You are mine and I will fight for you, no matter what awaits us." Daniel looked at her, unsure whether to hate her or believe her. But in that moment, surrounded by the endless galaxy, he felt the truth settle in his heart. He was trapped, yes, but he was also bound to something larger than himself, something that could not be undone. And as the stars drifted by, he knew this was only the beginning. The ship moved through the silence of space with a calm that unsettled Daniel. He sat near the wide viewing pane, staring at the stars that stretched forever in every direction. They looked beautiful, but to him they were not a gift. They were a cage. Earth was gone, hidden behind distance he could not cross. His chest tightened at the thought, but Solara sat beside him with the grace of someone who belonged here. She looked at home among the endless constellations. He could not escape the thought that he was just a mistake dragged into her world. The calm ended when the ship slowed. Lights dimmed and voices echoed in the alien tongue. The crew stood, their movements sharp and ritualistic. Solara rose too, her expression unreadable. She placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder and spoke softly. "We have arrived at the proving ground. My people will demand a test. They do not trust you. They must see your strength." Daniel swallowed hard. "Strength? I am not one of you. How am I supposed to prove anything?" Her glowing eyes locked on his. "You are human. They expect weakness. If you show them only fear, they will end you. But if you show them resolve, even without power, you may survive." The words chilled him. He did not ask what would happen if he failed. He could already see the answer in her eyes. When the doors of the ship opened, the air changed. A strange world lay before them. The sky was deep violet, streaked with two suns, and the ground was black stone that glowed faintly beneath their feet. Towers rose in the distance, carved from crystal and metal, casting long shadows across the land. Waiting there were figures taller than any human, armored in plates that shimmered like liquid fire. They carried staffs tipped with blades that curved like crescent moons. Daniel's legs felt weak, but Solara held his arm and guided him forward. The crowd of warriors parted as they walked, their eyes sharp and unkind. Whispers followed them, the sound of judgment already passed before the trial even began. At the center stood a platform carved from stone, marked with glowing patterns. Solara led him there and whispered again, her voice trembling though she tried to hide it. "This is where you will be tested. Do not falter. No matter what they put before you, do not turn away." The leader of the warriors stepped forward. His voice was deep like thunder rolling across mountains. He spoke words Daniel could not understand, but Solara translated quietly. "He says your bond to me must be proven. You will face the trial of endurance. If you survive, they will accept our union." Daniel looked around, panic burning through him. "And if I do not?" Solara did not answer. Her silence was answer enough. The warriors surrounded the platform, their staffs striking the ground in unison. A sound like a heartbeat echoed through the air. The stone beneath Daniel's feet began to glow, and from the cracks emerged shapes of light. They rose higher, forming beasts made of flame and shadow, their bodies twisted with claws, their eyes burning with hunger. Daniel stumbled back, his heart hammering. One of the beasts roared, the sound shattering the air. The force of it knocked him to the ground. He scrambled to his feet, breath sharp in his chest. Solara stood outside the circle, her face pale but determined. She called out to him, "Remember what I said. Do not falter." The beasts circled him. Their forms flickered, half real and half illusion, but the heat of their breath was real, and the sharp claws that scraped against the stone were real. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The circle held him like a prison. One beast lunged. Daniel threw himself aside, the claws cutting air where he had stood. He stumbled, nearly falling again. Another beast came from behind, and he spun, grabbing a broken shard of stone from the ground. He swung wildly, the shard passing through the creature's body of flame, yet the beast recoiled as if struck. Daniel's heart pounded. They could be hurt. The warriors watched in silence. Their glowing eyes followed every move. Daniel gritted his teeth and steadied himself. He had no training, no weapon, no plan, but he had survived struggle all his life. He had fought to live in a world that never gave him ease. This was no different. Survival was survival. He faced the next attack head-on. When a beast leapt, he drove the shard forward, piercing its chest of light. The creature shrieked and dissolved into smoke. Pain burned through Daniel's arm where the heat had scorched him, but he stood firm. More came at once, and he fought with desperation, dodging, striking, refusing to fall. His body shook with exhaustion, but he remembered Solara's words. Do not falter. Minutes stretched into eternity. Sweat dripped down his face, and his breath came ragged. Each beast he struck dissolved into nothing, but more rose from the glowing cracks. His legs weakened, his vision blurred. But he forced himself to stand tall even when every part of him begged to collapse. Finally, the ground stopped glowing. The last beast hissed, then melted into mist. Silence followed, heavy and complete. Daniel stood trembling, blood dripping from his arm where fire had cut him, his chest heaving. He dropped the shard of stone, his body near breaking. The leader of the warriors stepped forward. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he bowed his head slightly, the faintest gesture of respect. The others followed, their weapons striking the ground once more, not in threat but in recognition. Solara rushed forward, her hands gripping Daniel's shoulders. Her eyes glistened, her voice hushed but proud. You did it. They accept you now. You are my consort in truth. Daniel wanted to collapse, but he forced himself to meet the gaze of the warriors. He did not feel like a hero. He felt broken, exhausted, and terrified. Yet somewhere deep within him a spark burned. He had survived. He had proven himself. But as he looked into Solara's glowing eyes, he realized this was only one step. The galaxy would demand more, and every test ahead would be harder than the last. The violet skies of the trial world faded behind them as the ship carried Daniel and Solara deeper into the stars. Daniel sat near the viewing pane once again, his arm wrapped in strange cloth that glowed faintly where it touched his burns. The alien medicine eased his pain, but it did nothing to quiet the storm in his mind. He had survived the trial. He had stood before monsters of flame and shadow, but survival was not victory. He felt like a man standing on a crumbling bridge, certain that the next step would send him falling into the void. Solara moved with quiet grace, though Daniel could see the weight in her posture. She spoke little as the ship drifted through the endless dark. When she finally sat beside him, her glowing eyes carried a fire he had not seen before. The news has spread, she whispered. Our bond is no longer a secret. My enemies will not sit in silence. Daniel turned to her, his voice hoarse. Enemies? I thought the trial proved something. Her lips tightened. It proved you are not weak. But power is not the only force in the galaxy. There are lords who wanted me for themselves, for their dynasties, for their wars. They will not forgive this union. They will hunt us. The weight of her words pressed against Daniel's chest. He leaned back against the cold wall, staring at the stars as if they might give him answers. So I'm not just trapped in your world. I am a target in it. Solara's silence was answer enough. The days that followed were filled with unease. The crew of the ship, loyal to Solara, treated Daniel with cautious respect, but he could see suspicion in their eyes. Some whispered when they thought he could not hear. Others looked at him as if he were a fragile object in a world of steel. He hated their judgment, yet he could not deny it. He was human, out of place, dragged into a galaxy where every glance seemed to weigh his worth. The threat revealed itself one night when the alarms began to scream. The walls of the ship pulsed red and the air filled with sharp mechanical voices. Solara rushed into the command chamber, Daniel close behind her. Through the vast window he saw it, a shadow among the stars, a ship larger than anything he had imagined, its body lined with spires that glowed crimson. The crew shouted in their alien tongue. Solara's voice cut through them, commanding, steady. She turned to Daniel and spoke quickly. It is the House of Valar, one of the lords who demanded my hand. He will not ask for permission. He will take what he believes is his. The enemy ship loomed closer, its spires crackling with energy. Daniel gripped the railing, his body trembling. He had no weapon, no skill, nothing to offer. Yet when he looked at Solara standing tall against the chaos, he felt something stir inside him. He could not let her fight alone. The ship shook as beams of light struck its shields. Sparks rained from the walls and the crew shouted warnings. Solara turned to Daniel, her eyes fierce. "Stay close to me. If they board us, you must not leave my side." Daniel nodded, though fear clawed at his throat. The ship rocked again, and the sound of tearing metal echoed through the halls. The enemy had forced entry. Figures stormed the corridor, clad in dark armor, their blades humming with deadly light. The crew rushed to meet them, steel clashing against steel, light flashing in violent bursts. Daniel stumbled back, his heart hammering, but Solara drew a weapon from her side, a blade that glowed like fire, and met the attackers with ferocity. Daniel's body moved before his mind could stop it. He grabbed a fallen staff, heavy and humming faintly, and swung it at one of the armored figures. The blow cracked against the enemy's helmet, sending him crashing to the ground. Daniel's arms shook from the force, but he tightened his grip. Fear burned in him, but so did something else. A stubborn refusal to fall. The battle raged through the corridors, and Daniel fought clumsily, desperately, beside Solara. He struck where he could, defended when he had to, every motion driven by survival. Solara moved with the skill of a warrior born to war, her blade carving through the enemy with deadly precision. Yet even she began to falter as more poured into the ship. The enemy commander stepped forward, towering in dark armor, his eyes glowing crimson through the visor. His voice thundered across the hall. "Princess Solara, you defy your blood. You bind yourself to a creature of dirt and weakness. Hand him over and your people may yet live." Daniel froze, his breath caught in his throat. The commander's gaze fell on him, heavy with disdain. He felt smaller than ever, as if the galaxy itself weighed down on him. But Solara stepped in front of him, her blade raised, her voice filled with defiance. "He is mine. Touch him, and you will know the wrath of my bloodline." The commander's laughter was cold, echoing through the ship. He raised his weapon, its edge glowing with crimson fire. "Then both of you will fall." The clash that followed shook the corridor. Solara met the commander's strikes with fierce strength, but his power was overwhelming. Each blow sent shockwaves through the walls and sparks lit the air like falling stars. Daniel stood frozen, staff in hand, his heart screaming at him to run, but his body rooted to the ground. Solara faltered under the force of the commander's assault. Her blade cracked, her breath came sharp. Daniel's chest burned with panic. He could not watch her fall. With a roar that surprised even himself, he rushed forward and drove the staff into the commander's side. The weapon hummed violently, discharging energy that sent the towering figure crashing against the wall. The corridor fell silent for a heartbeat. The crew stared in disbelief, and Solara turned to Daniel, her chest heaving, her eyes wide. For a moment she looked at him not as a burden but as something more. The commander rose again, fury burning in his crimson gaze, but alarms screamed once more. The enemy ship began to retreat, pulling away into the dark. They had not expected resistance. The threat was not gone, but for now the storm had passed. Daniel dropped the staff, his arms trembling, his breath ragged. Solara caught him before he collapsed. Her voice was soft but unshaken. "You see now, they will never stop coming. As long as we are bound, you will face their fury. But you are no longer just a mistake. You are part of this fight." Daniel met her eyes, his body broken with exhaustion but his heart steady. He understood now. The galaxy would never allow them peace. Their bond was not just an accident. It was a spark in a universe of fire, and every flame would come for them. And somewhere deep inside he felt the first ember of resolve. The silence after the battle felt heavier than the clash of blades. The corridors of the ship were littered with the remnants of the struggle, burnt metal, shattered armor, and the faint hum of dying weapons. Daniel sat against the wall, his body bruised, his hands raw from gripping the alien staff. His chest rose and fell in ragged breaths, but his eyes stayed fixed on the stars beyond the viewing pane. They looked endless, cold, and unforgiving. He could not shake the truth Solara had spoken. There would be no peace. As long as their bond existed, the galaxy would chase them. Solara walked the length of the corridor, her blade scorched, her hair damp with sweat. She spoke to her crew in the sharp tones of her language, and the warriors bowed their heads before dispersing to repair the ship. Only when the noise had faded did she kneel beside Daniel. Her hand rested on his arm, steady and warm. "You see it now. Our union is not a shield. It is a beacon. Every enemy who sought my hand will see you as an insult. Every rival who sought my throne will see you as a threat. We must move forward. We cannot stand still. Daniel looked at her, exhaustion pulling at his body, but he forced his voice to steady. Move forward where? There is nowhere in this galaxy that wants me. Her glowing eyes softened, a flicker of something almost fragile in them. Then we will make a place. The days that followed became a blur of travel. The ship slipped from one system to another, through swirling gates of light that bent the stars into rivers. Each new world brought challenges. On one planet, vast cities of crystal towers welcomed Solara with cautious respect, but turned their eyes cold when they saw Daniel. On another, they walked through jungles of towering red trees, hunted by beasts that moved like shadows. At every stop, whispers followed them. The alien princess and her human consort, a mistake that had become a story carried on the winds of the galaxy. Daniel felt the weight of those whispers press on him. He was no warrior, no prince, no leader, yet every step forward drew him deeper into a destiny he could not abandon. He watched Solara stand tall in every court, her voice commanding, her presence fierce, and he realized something unsettling. The bond between them was no longer just a chain of accident. It was becoming something more, something that tightened not because of ritual but because of choice. But the galaxy was not merciful. Messages reached them, intercepted by Solara's loyal crew. Some carried threats, others warnings. Lords who ruled fleets spoke of war. Rivals who commanded armies promised vengeance. Each message ended with the same demand: break the bond or burn. Solara never wavered, but Daniel saw the toll it took on her. In the quiet of night, when the stars drifted silently outside, her eyes would dim, and her hands would tremble before she steadied herself again. One night, as the ship passed through a region of space where the stars burned blood red, Daniel found her alone in the command chamber. She stood by the window, her face reflected in the endless dark. He stepped beside her, his voice low. You could end this. You could let them take me and your enemies would stop hunting you. Her gaze snapped to his, sharp and unwavering. Do not ever say that again. You are mine. This union was an accident, but it is now truth. I will not give you up. Not to them. Not to anyone. Daniel felt the weight of her words strike deeper than any blade. He had thought of himself as a mistake, but in that moment he saw something else in her eyes. Something fierce. Unyielding. He was not just her burden. He was her choice. Their odyssey carried them farther, to systems where the stars were swallowed by storms of fire, to moons where ancient ruins whispered secrets of civilizations long gone. Each world tested them, breaking them down, forcing them to stand together or fall apart. On one forgotten planet, they were ambushed by mercenaries, hunters paid to drag Daniel away. He fought beside Solara, his fear burning into determination. Though his strikes were clumsy, though his body broke under the weight of battle, he refused to be taken. Each time he rose, Solara's eyes burned brighter, as if his defiance gave her strength. The crew began to change as well. Where once they had doubted him, now they began to bow their heads in silent respect. They had seen him bleed, seen him stand, seen him refuse to falter. Slowly, the whispers shifted. Not just the human consort, not just the mistake. Something more. But the greater storm was coming. Solara knew it, and Daniel felt it in every breath. Their enemies were gathering. Fleets moved in the dark, preparing for war. The House of Valar was not finished. Other lords, jealous of Solara's throne, watched with hungry eyes. Their journey was no longer a flight. It was a march toward confrontation. As their ship passed into the shadow of a dead star, Solara sat with Daniel in the silence of the viewing chamber. Her voice was quiet, but her words cut with clarity. This odyssey is not just survival. It is the forging of something new. They wanted me as a symbol. They see you as an insult. But together we can be more than both. We can change the galaxy. Daniel stared at her, the stars burning faintly in the reflection of her eyes. He wanted to tell her he was afraid, that he was not strong enough, that he was still just the boy who lived in a small apartment on Earth. But the words died on his tongue. Because somewhere deep inside he knew she was right. Their union had become more than an accident. It was a spark, and the galaxy was the fire it threatened to ignite.